Welcome to my Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2 spoiler review. I have a non-spoiler review already on the channel for folks that want to know if they should check it out or what my thoughts were on the overall second part of the last season of Cobra Kai. Here we're going to actually go into plot stuff and actual spoilers. The reason why I decided to do a non-spoiler and a spoiler is because there's a lot of very shocking twists and events that occurred in Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 2, maybe more than any other season prior, and I'll explain why I feel that way in just a moment. But it was something that I thought I should put out just to kind of give my first impressions. Now it's been about a day or so I can marinate and think a little bit more about my feelings on Part 2 of Season 6 of Cobra Kai. And I'll be talking about the good and the bad because there were some things about Season 6 Part 2 that I did not like, but there were a lot of things that I did like for sure. And there were a lot of things that I felt maybe in a way did Season 6 Part 2 did things that Part 1 did not do and fix some of the problems that I had with Part 1. We'll go into that here in just a moment. Again, this is your last warning. Check out my non-spoiler first if you have not seen these episodes yet. And trust me, you don't want to go into them knowing anything. And guess what? We didn't know anything because 95% of the leaks were indeed fake. I'm talking about the ones that were all over the Cobra Kai leaks Reddit page. I covered a few of them. I even said, I don't know how accurate this is. I'm not a leaker when it comes to Cobra Kai. I have no sources. Didn't get into Cobra Kai until earlier this year. But I love the show because, like I've mentioned, I've watched Karate Kid since I was a kid, and I revisited the whole franchise this year, and now I'm dialed in. So, yeah, a lot of the leaks were fake. There were a ton of leaks that were fake, and none gave away the big cliffhanger at the end of episode 10 that's going to lead us into the final 5 episodes of the entire series. But let's go ahead and get into it. So, these 5 episodes, I talked about how Season 6 Part 1 was probably the weakest batch of 5 episodes that they had put out, and a lot of that had to do with what they did in the middle of the 3, which is basically the stuff with John Kreese in the cave with the Cobra, and the fact that Sensei Kim, his instructor, is somehow still alive. He should be in his hundreds at this point, maybe. That's very, very strange. I didn't like that, and the show has obviously bended reality when it comes to the karate, when it comes to the combat itself. As the show progressed, it got more and more ridiculous. There were situations in the show where there were school rumbles, especially in season 2, where nobody got arrested. That nowadays that would not happen. Kids would be going to juvie or maybe even adult jail, depending on how violent the crime was and what state they're in. It got to the point where it became this sort of pseudo reality, and you have to kind of accept it. There were parts of the show that kind of kept going in that direction, and there were a couple of episodes in this show, in Season 6 Part 2, that were going a bit off the deep end, but then sort of by the last 2 episodes 9 and 10, everything kind of came back to being about karate, being about Team Miyagi-Do working together and overcoming these challenges on the world stage. So, I'll go into some of the things I did not like and then go into some of the things that I did like. So we're going to have a balanced review here. The stuff with Johnny wanting to find out about Mr. Miyagi, I know some people are upset about that because it seems to be taking over his head. I am not upset. It makes perfect sense for this guy. Miyagi's the only real father figure in his life. Makes perfect sense for him to feel the way that he does. However, I do feel like he needs to accept that Mr. Miyagi had his own character arc, and that by the time that Mr. Miyagi met Daniel in Karate Kid Part 1, he was a changed man already. His story had already been told. He's finding out about who Miyagi was before then, and the reality is that when it comes to a lot of great people and mentors, they go through an arc in real life and in fiction. I, myself, have gone through arcs in my life where I've learned to work on things and deal with things in my past. And I've had anger issues and things of that nature. Many of you have had your own struggles. This is just part of life. So he has to accept it. And in many ways, it humanizes Miyagi. One of the things about Karate Kid, the old movies, is that Miyagi never sold for anybody. Miyagi was beating up younger Terry Silver and younger John Kreese in Karate Kid Part 3 on his own. He was a badass. And that type of stuff is very rare to see in the real world, even with real knowledgeable older martial artists. Because, look what happened with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, man. Father Time beats everyone, right? It just does. No matter how much training you got, you're going to get old. However, to me, the Daniel sort of seeking information wasn't the problem. The issue was how ridiculous it got that the dude gets attacked and thrown into a shark cage or a dog cage with these pit bulls. And I was watching it and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this is way beyond like what this was supposed to be. Johnny ends up taking over, and as I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, all right, like, now we're supposed to believe that John Kreese is an international, criminal guy who has connections. This is a guy who was in the military, John Kreese. Thankfully, they revealed that it wasn't John Kreese, because one of the leaks that was correct 100% is the return of Terry Silver. And Terry Silver is indeed the money man behind the Iron Dragons. That is something that did leak, that is in fact accurate. And that one had to be accurate because there were actual pictures of Thomas Ian Black taken on the Sekai Taikai stage. So, he had to be there. That all was true. Now, when they revealed it was him, I knew it was him the minute that you heard Danny Boy. I was like, Terry! Like, I knew it was him, and he's in the hot tub. And then, what I thought was hilarious, he's in the hot tub, presumably naked, gets up with John Kreese, Johnny Lawrence, Kim, and Daniel there. He gets up with his dick out and just walks off, puts the coat on. I'm just like thinking to myself, like, man, like, what a character. I'm so glad he's here because he really is the top villain of this series. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about episodes 9 and 10. So, Terry Silver, thumbs up. The Daniel stuff, maybe a bit too far. I thought the Johnny Daniel stuff, it was starting to get long in the tooth, but thankfully they kind of scaled it back and it worked for me. I also did not like the way that Dimitri was behaving. I know he's supposed to be like somewhat of the pessimist of the group, but it was just on and on and on. MIT, we're not going to win. MIT, we're not going to win. It just really became this annoying, obnoxious. It almost felt like the character was regressing back to how he was in season 1 before he gained the confidence he got from learning martial arts. And that really got annoying to me. I really wanted it to be a situation where by now he can be a little pessimistic, a little worried. I get that, but it just kind of went on and on and on. And I think fans of Dimitri and Hawk, they had a couple of scenes where their friendship really did bond, but I know a lot of folks are probably going to be upset. Fans of Hawk are going to be upset because there wasn't anything for him to really do here in comparison to other seasons. Hawk in season 2, 3, and 4 was a centerpiece character. Here, the show wasn't really about him because what ended up happening was, obviously, when it comes to the students, Miguel is going to be the guy who's going to get the most attention along with Robbie, and it really was those two and Sam. And on the other side, we have Tori, we have Quan and Yoon, but the big sort of new enemy now is the introduction of Axel and Zara from the Iron Dragons, who were the scariest martial artists we've ever seen. I thought that they were building Quan up to be the top new villain, the top new rival for Team Miyagi-Do. And for a while they were, but then Axel shows up, and Dimitri called him the Winter Soldier mixed with Frankenstein. Giant dude, big tall guy, trained under very harsh conditions by his sensei. And he's sort of the new mountain to climb, no pun intended. When it came to the Iron Dragons, it really was just the captains and a bunch of jabronis. Like the other members of the Iron Dragons got barely any TV time. They weren't even given names, I don't even think. It was just all about Axel and Zara. And they did the love triangle thing again, except this time you had Zara with the Iron Dragons getting in there with Robbie and Tori, and Quan was kind of also rattling things up, trying to. And I like the fact that Quan was playing psychological games with Robbie, and it actually got to him. And it had to be Miguel to kind of give Robbie the motivation to become a good leader. Miguel himself showing his leadership skills. That's good stuff for that character. When we got to episode 3, Snakes on a Plane, I started to worry a bit. Obviously, Johnny and Miguel go back to America because Carmen, Johnny's wife and Miguel's mom, is having they had a possible, like, she was hospitalized. And there may be a danger to the baby and to Carmen herself, which is similar to what happened to Miyagi. That's kind of an interesting parallel there. And a lot of that episode takes place on a plane with this drunk guy who becomes this annoying character and whatnot. I was starting to worry the show was about to fall off its wheels because at first it's sort of divide and conquer in that Daniel has his side story with the guy from Karate Kid Part 3 coming back, which was cool, and Terry's trap. And then we have this very realistic, serious problem that caused them to fly from Barcelona all the way back to California, which is a long flight. That is a long flight. And then while that's going on, we're sort of the love triangle started with Axel. Samantha finds out that Axel's being sort of abused and not really treated with respect. Of course, that's going to lead to a story arc with him. A short one, but still one that's going to probably be interesting to know and to study coming up for part 3. And then when we get to episodes 9 and 10 is when I think the show really kind of brought everything back together. The thing about the Sekai Taikai is the focus was really on the 3 main dojos, Cobra Kai, Miyagi-Do, Iron Dragons. You also had the Panfuria de Pantera, and we saw a little bit of the other ones. We did see a little bit of the other ones. We saw the Irish dojo and, of course, the Russian dojo, but not enough to really form any kind of, like, we didn't really care too much because they weren't the focal point. And we knew there wouldn't be because I think there were like 16 countries. The thing I was starting to get worried about is that we had barely seen, by the time episode 3 happened, we barely saw much of the Sekai Taikai. And there were different competitions, like there's a martial arts competition on like a big sort of American Gladiators-esque like platform. You saw that. The one on the littler platform where you can't fall off. The team battles. There was no Sensei division, another incorrect leak. I mean, and the thing is, I was excited for the Sensei division. I was like, okay, that's going to be awesome seeing Johnny and Daniel. And there's supposed to be a line where Daniel tells Robbie no mercy. Like, all this cool. None of that happened. None of that happened, man. Maybe in part 3 he'll tell him. I don't know. But they did a lot of different things that, again, a little bit of a pseudo reality. However, when you listen to the interviews that I heard with the creators, they purposely did that to kind of make it unpredictable, so that when the teams go to the Sekai Taikai, they change the rules every year or so, or every couple years when they do a tournament, so that you kind of stay on your toes, you know, and you don't just practice for one thing. And they had a wonderful sequence there where Miguel went 2-on-1 and won on his own. So he really showed his, you know, the Miguel character arc of being a bullied kid, eventually becoming this possible world champion. You know, we'll see what they do because it's that the tournament's not over yet. You know, that's going to be a great story arc and seeing his development. Robbie, of course, is probably the most talented of the team, and the Robbie and Quan beef had been built up, and I had even done a prediction video where I said that was going to be the final. We got the fight in episode 9. Episode 9 was the big tag team thing, and the thing that I thought was, another thing I thought was dumb was Dimitri trying to sow the seeds of Kenny Payne being an insider for Terry Silver. Thankfully, that did not go. I thought I was going to go for 4 or 5 episodes. I was going to keep going until part 3. Thankfully, that did not happen. It was pretty closed off when Kenny Payne showed his loyalty to Miyagi-Do, because Kenny Payne did throw the shirt down. At the end of season 5, like, he did turn good. He did leave Terry Silver, and I did like that the storyline with like Kenny and Daniel's son. I'm glad that whole thing got resolved, because it was just, it led to both of them becoming better fighters and even better people. But at least Kenny Payne got redemption on the world stage. And then the Devin thing also sort of went the way that I was expecting, even though I felt like Devin, I thought she was going to leave, that Kenny would straight up replace her. That's not what they did. Something else too, I really wanted a few more scenes with Peyton List and Martin Cove, with Tori and John Kreese. I really wanted more scenes with them, because yes, they did explain, they sort of went into the fact that she knew that she would never get picked above Samantha LaRusso. She knew that she, obviously Kreese and her have that bond. But I really thought that we'd get more of their kind of relationship, and we didn't get much of it. Now, the surprise that caught my eye and put a smile on my face, I was feeling bad about what happened to Chosen, but the Chosen Sensei Kim thing was totally unexpected, and I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined Sensei Kim actually showing she had a heart. Like, she didn't show it completely, but she did somewhat show it. And there was that really great scene with her and Tori, when Tori's like, was it all worth it giving up your life for this? She's like, yes. But you wonder, does she really mean it, Sensei Kim, since season 5, has come off like this sort of borderline psycho, who just doesn't have any care for anybody but the martial arts and the Cobra Kai and her family's legacy, right? And then here we saw her kind of open up a bit, literally, for Chosen, and that led to some really good funny stuff. I thought, again, the Chosen being drunk thing, it was like Miyagi. It's a throwback to how Miyagi was behaving when the anniversary of his wife and kid dying kind of hit him. So there was that. Terry Silver scenes were all magical. I mean, Thomas Ian Griffin has made this show a treat. I think if there was no Terry Silver in part 2, it would hurt the show. I really do believe that the show needed to have Terry Silver, because when Terry was introduced and when Sensei Kim started showing a heart, I started to see where the story was going. Cobra Kai were indeed not going to be the real antagonist here. Yes, there are still obviously issues, but at the end of the day, the Iron Dragons became the primary antagonist with Terry Silver at the helm, and Kreese and Sensei Kim started to kind of slowly begin their turn to the light side, which Martin Cove kind of spoiled in an interview, that he has a beautiful character arc at the end, and I'm going to do a separate video giving you predictions for part 3 of what I think is going to happen. And I'll go into detail about how I think that goes down. But clearly, Johnny saving John Kreese during the fight with Terry Silver in episode 10, we finally got the Kreese Silver fight that people have been wanting to see now for a couple seasons. Maybe even longer than that. We finally got to see Johnny save Kreese. So, deep down inside, there is still some affection between the two. Obviously, there's a lot of things that the show has been exploring that we didn't really see in the past, and even in the first Karate Kid, about the relationship that Johnny had with John Kreese prior to the events of the All Valley, and how that was a father figure to him as well, and that there was a bright side to John Kreese. I mean, that Johnny has seen that, but in his own head, based on the behavior of Kreese in season 3 and forward, wasn't really something that he wanted to be a part of, because Johnny was changing. Well, Terry Silver comes in, and now he's definitively the puppeteer, definitively the mastermind, and he gives Daniel the bad news that Mr. Miyagi killed somebody in the Sekai Taikai when he competed. I predicted that being one of the possibilities. I did a video with multiple different possibilities, and I had a feeling it would make sense. This is why he doesn't like tournaments. This is why he doesn't like using karate for offense, only defense, because he doesn't want to. He probably, and they didn't fully give us the entire story on this yet, but he probably did it based on either he lost his temper based on what happened to his family and he went too far, or it was an accidental death. But little did we know that that was meant to be foreshadowing for the events to come. So when they had the Russians get eliminated for performance enhancing drugs, I laughed because it was a throwback to Rocky 4, but it's stuff that happens in real fights all the time. PEDs are like a thing that people get suspended for. And then Cobra Kai, after getting trounced in episode 9, is all of a sudden back in again. Episode 9, I want to talk about this. That was a really good episode, probably my favorite one of this season. And they had been talking about it, the actors did, because that was the one that had the most complex karate sequences. And that was also the culmination of Robbie and Quan. And when Robbie and Quan had that great fight and Robbie actually won, I immediately said to myself, I said, okay, Robbie just overcame Quan. And then they start teasing a rematch in the captain's division. So in the back of my head, I was thinking, okay, Quan's going to beat Robbie in the rematch, and then Miguel will beat Quan. That's what I had thought in my head they were going to do, not knowing what was going to happen in episode 10. Because once Robbie beats Quan, like Quan had been built up as being Robbie's rival. And like I said, I did a video about it. I thought that Robbie and Quan would be the last two, that Robbie would finally not get second place, finally, become the champion, beating the unbeatable Quan, and that would be the end of it. And the show just went in a completely different direction. Again, lots of twists and turns I was not expecting, including what happened at the very end when the Robbie Quan thing continued and spilt out into a brawl when the Russians, angry at being kicked out of the tournament, stormed the stage. And I saw an interview with the creators who were like, they're probably banned from the Sekai Taikai now forever. And yeah, that's probably true. I would wager to say that's true now, because there was the biggest rumble we've ever gotten in the history of Cobra Kai, except everybody there is a martial arts practitioner. So the fight sequences were complicated, and there were a lot of great moments, like Tori and Sam saved each other, Robbie saved Tori, Daniel saved Johnny, a lot of little things, and then Kreese went off to try to literally kill Terry Silver. I mean, I was looking at this like, man, this is going from 0 to 100 quickly. And we saw that fight at the end of season 5 with Terry and Chosen, and that was crazy. But having Kreese take the Korean dagger and try to kill Terry Silver, and there was a rumor. Remember that leak that said that Kreese beats up Terry Silver and cuts off his ponytail? I thought for a minute that that's what he was really going to take the knife to go do. But instead, he drops the knife. The knife is dropped on the way there like an idiot. Quan picks up the knife because he's mad that he can't beat Axel fair and square because he's so much big and so much scarier. Goes for one of his wild spin kicks. Tries to hurt or maybe even kill Axel. Axel sort of just defends himself, not even knowing he had the knife. Quan lands on the knife, and he is dead. Now, when I first saw this, I joked that, he's not dead. This is Cobra Kai. Nobody dies. No, I'm pretty sure he's dead. And I think Brandon H. Lee even came out and said that he thinks the character's dead. Or unless he could be misdirecting people, but he's dead. It was foreshadowed with the Miyagi thing, where the Sekai Taikai commissioner was basically saying, yeah, once in a while it happens. It was more common back then, implying that deaths don't really happen anymore. Injuries maybe, but not deaths. Well, this was different because somebody snuck a knife in. This entire story is culminating with the fact that this is all, in many ways, John Kreese's fault. He's the one that unleashed Terry back on the world in season 4. He's the one that brought the knife to Sekai Taikai. He's the one that brainwashed Quan into taking this so seriously that it became about more than just hand-to-hand combat. It became about actually hurting someone and trying to brainwash Tori with the whole war thing. So that's worth talking about. And that'll definitely be a plot going into part 3. This cliffhanger ended, and I'm over here sitting here thinking, where do we go from here? Like, if this were real, the tournament can't continue. No matter what, it cannot continue because somebody literally died. And even though it was a death that was somewhat in self-defense, Axel will probably be feeling a certain type of way about it. So will the senseis. Daniel, bro, Ralph Macchio's performance, the faces he made when he turned Quan over, and he had this look on his face of, this is not worth it. This is what I was worried was going to happen. This right here, and it happened. The creators, John, Josh, and Hayden said that people had been wondering if someone was ever going to die on this show. And even I said they were going to wait till the last season to kill off Terry Silver and John Kreese. I thought those two were going to die by the end of this whole story. And they might still die. I was not expecting Quan, one of the students, a young guy, a guy who I think is 18 or so in universe, to die the way that he did, which was accidental, but it was also a boneheaded move on his part. He took his own life on accident, and hell, even Terry Silver had a look on his face of complete shock. It almost, in a way, maybe even humanized Terry Silver. And also, they did continue the story about how Terry Silver's been teasing he's got some kind of illness, and he's been, that he's got some kind of terminal illness because he's like, if I go to hell, I'm bringing them with me. That was earlier in the season he said that, so I was thinking to myself, like, yeah, like, this is for sure going to end up, I don't think he's going to make it out of the show. But the Quan death was completely unexpected. However, when I look back at the previous 10 episodes of season 6, the first 10, if Robbie beat Quan in episode 9, that storyline is closed. And now Quan did qualify to continue in the captain's bracket, but the fight's just never going to happen, so something is going to have to be a shakeup in part 3. Also, another fake leak. No Julie. Julie Pierce. I had a feeling that Julie Pierce being Dimitri's mother was stupid. Why would they hold off on that till now? Like, what's the explanation going to be? I had a feeling that wasn't going to be true, and I'm glad it wasn't because that wouldn't have made any sense. But the big letdown may have been because of some of the things in the leaks that I wanted to see. Like, for example, I wanted to see a montage of, and at least more of a montage of the other schools. There was one, I think, but I wanted to see more of the other dojos fighting each other, not Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do and Iron Dragons, but they just kept it focused on those 3 mostly. Hell, even the episode titles were wrong. The leaked episode titles, even those were wrong. I think history will look fondly back on this part. It was definitely better than part 1. It was, the action picked up in the last 2 episodes for sure, but it wasn't just all action. The humor, I thought, was fine, but not as funny as previous seasons. And even though still season 5 is still my favorite season so far of the show, I don't think season 6 has topped it yet. We'll see how they stick the landing. I do feel like it peaked in season 5, and I think now, I don't think we've hit a valley just yet, no pun intended. That's the next part, but I think the show has kind of leveled out, and I think I did like season 5 more. I thought everything in season 5 built up better, and it had better moments, I felt. Season 6 may have not been necessary. I don't know. Again, I'm not going to give a final review on the whole thing until the last 5 episodes drop, because those are going to be very important to see where the story goes. But I know some people think that season 3 and 4 were the peak. I mean, I liked 5 a lot, but I could understand that as well. However, I care about the characters a lot, all of them. and I care about where the story ends up. And I'm gonna miss the show. Like, I'm genuinely gonna miss the show. However, even I will tell you that there is no way they can do another season afterward. Like, I know they're not going to. We know this already, but going into this final season, like, if there was even a slight bit of hesitation, if Netflix even slightly says, "Hey, our numbers are up, give us season 7," I think that's a bad idea. I think after seeing somebody literally die, being accidental, but still somebody died, at that point, I feel like there's not much else you can do after that. Like, this is, as much as seeing other Sekai Taikais would be fun, and, you know, I love martial arts and all that, still, it cannot continue. It absolutely cannot continue. This has to end, and the characters have to move on with their lives, and we have to see the full character arc of Johnny Lawrence about to become a father once again with his third kid, because there was that great moment where he told Miguel, "You're my son too," and that was a nice moment. We'll see. But part 2 was better than part 1. Still, we have a lot of unresolved issues going into part 3. Let's see how the story turns out. I will do a separate predictions video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite and least favorite moments were of season 6, part 2. And these last 5 episodes will really determine if the show can have a great and proper ending, and how it ties back to season 1, which I have predictions on that coming up in the next few days. And it will also hopefully wrap up the story well and elevate the rest of the 6 seasons, like the other episodes, the previous episodes, elevate them to make one final great show. Because a lot of shows, man, when you get to a certain point, they do kind of jump the shark. And some think that this show already did. Others still love it. It just depends on who you ask. But there are some shows where it's like for example, friends of mine tell me Dexter after season 4 is bad. And there's like 3 seasons. I've never watched Dexter. I'm just letting you know about what I was told. So at least with Cobra Kai, I don't think it's felt long in the tooth yet. But these, like, you know, Dimitri Hawk, Johnny Daniel, this stuff has got to, like, get wrapped up nicely before the show, like, actually wrapped up, and we can't just see them going back to that again. We can't see Tori and Sam again. Like, that's gotta be just, you know, unless they do it, like, more friendly, that's gotta be just it. Like, put an end to the story. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments.